You do not need a gym membership or an hour of sweating to see your blood pressure numbers drop significantly. The problem is that most traditional advice focuses on high-impact cardio like running or intense aerobics, which can be brutal on older knees, hips, and backs, causing many seniors to give up entirely before they see results. I'm Dr. Ben Harris, and today I am going to walk you through a specific routine that is gentle on the joints, takes just 10 minutes, and targets the underlying stiffness in your arteries. Many people think effective exercise requires heavy movement, but I will show you the strongest move for blood pressure actually involves not moving at all, but we need to cover the foundation first. Arthur came to see me because he was feeling defeated. He was 74 years old and had been an active man for most of his life. In his 50s and 60s, he was a runner. He loved the feeling of jogging through his neighborhood in the mornings, and for a long time that activity kept his heart strong and his blood pressure in a healthy range. But as he crossed into his 70s, his knees began to protest. The cartilage had worn down, and the impact of his feet hitting the pavement sent sharp pains up his legs. His doctor at the time told him he had to stop running to preserve what was left of his joints. Arthur listened, and he stopped running. But he did not replace that activity with anything else because he associated exercise with movement, and movement now caused him pain. Within 6 months of stopping his runs, his blood pressure began to climb. It went from a steady 120/80 to creeping up toward 140/90. He felt like his body was betraying him. He told me, "Dr. Ben, I want to lower my pressure, but I can't move the way I used to." This is a common trap. We often think that to get a cardiovascular benefit, we have to be moving rapidly, breathing hard, and putting stress on our frame. But I told Arthur that for blood pressure specifically, stillness can sometimes be more powerful than motion. We introduced Arthur to the concept of isometric exercise. This is a type of training where your muscles contract, but they do not change length, and your joints do not move. It is static. It is quiet. And the specific movement we used is often called a wall sit or a wall stand. The reason this works so well for blood pressure is fascinating but simple. When you hold a muscle in a contracted state without moving, the blood vessels within that muscle are temporarily compressed. The blood flow is restricted just for a moment while you hold the position. When you release that hold and relax the muscle, your body responds with a powerful surge of blood flow. Your blood vessels open up wider than they were before. This is a process called reactive hyperemia. It releases natural compounds like nitric oxide into your bloodstream, which signals your arterial walls to relax and widen. It is essentially training your blood vessels to be more flexible, just like you might stretch a muscle to make it more flexible. For Arthur, this was a revelation because it required zero impact on his knees. He did not have to jump, run, or even walk fast. He could do it right in his living room while listening to the radio. The change in his numbers was not overnight, but it was steady. After about 6 weeks of doing this consistently, his resting blood pressure began to drift back down. He felt in control again, not because he was running marathons, but because he was using a smarter physiological trigger. Here is how you can do what Arthur did. You need a sturdy wall that is clear of pictures or furniture. You simply lean your back flat against the wall. Walk your feet out about 1 to 2 feet away from the wall. Your feet should be shoulder width apart for stability. Now, slowly slide your back down the wall as if you are sitting into an invisible chair. You do not need to go deep. Many younger people try to get their thighs parallel to the floor, but for blood pressure benefits, you do not need to go that low. You only need to bend your knees enough to feel your thigh muscles, the quadriceps, engage and start working. You might feel a little heat or tension in the front of your legs. That is exactly what we want. Hold that position. You are not moving up and down. You are just holding it. Start with 20 or 30 seconds. Then, use your hands on the wall or on your thighs to help push yourself back up to a standing position. Rest for a minute or two, then do it again. The goal is to do about 3 or 4 rounds of this. The entire routine takes less than 10 minutes. It is incredibly safe for the joints because there is no grinding or pounding. The pressure is steady. However, There is one critical safety rule you must follow, and I cannot stress this enough. When you are holding that position, focusing on your leg muscles, you must not hold your breath. It is a natural human instinct to hold your breath when we are exerting effort. If you hold your breath while doing this, your blood pressure can spike temporarily, which is the opposite of what we want. You must breathe continuously. I told Arthur to count out loud or to hum a tune while he was holding the wall sit. If you can talk or hum, you are breathing. If you are silent and your face is turning red, you are likely holding your breath. This approach is wonderful because it separates the health of your heart from the health of your joints. You do not have to choose between knee pain and high blood pressure. You can protect both. For Arthur, this became his daily ritual. He would do his wall holds before dinner. It gave him a sense of accomplishment without the ice packs he used to need after a run. Before we move on to the next method, I would love to know a little bit about who is reading. Please scroll down and leave a comment telling me your age and what your usual top number range is for your blood pressure. It helps me understand who I am talking to. Margaret was 68, and she was doing everything right according to the standard brochures she picked up at the clinic. She was retired, so she had plenty of time, and she was very disciplined. She read that walking was good for blood pressure, so she set her alarm every single morning for 6 o'clock. She would drink a glass of water, lace up her sneakers, and go for a brisk 30-minute walk around her neighborhood before breakfast. She did this rain or shine. She was proud of her consistency. However, when she came to see me for a checkup, she was frustrated. She brought in her logbook of blood pressure readings, and they were stubborn. They hadn't moved much at all. She looked at me and said, "Dr. Ben, I am walking every morning. Why isn't my pressure coming down?" The issue wasn't that Margaret was doing the wrong thing. Walking is excellent. The issue was that she was doing the right thing at a time that wasn't optimized for her specific body rhythm. We have to understand that blood pressure follows a daily pattern, a circadian rhythm. For most people, blood pressure rises naturally in the morning. This is called the morning surge. It is your body's way of waking you up, getting blood to your brain, and preparing you for the day's activity. When Margaret went out for a brisk walk right at the peak of this morning surge, her body was already in a state of high alert. The exercise was adding stimulation to a system that was already stimulated. I suggested a simple experiment to Margaret. I asked her to keep doing her walk, but to move it from 6 in the morning to 6 in the evening. I wanted her to use that movement to burn off the stress of the day and signal to her body that it was time to wind down. She was skeptical because she was a morning person, but she agreed to try it for 2 weeks. The results were quite remarkable. By moving her activity to the early evening, she was helping to lower her blood pressure right before she went to sleep. This is crucial because your blood pressure while you sleep, what we call the dipping status, is one of the most important predictors of heart health. We want blood pressure to dip at night. By walking in the evening, Margaret helped widen her blood vessels and dissipate the stress hormones like cortisol that had built up during the day. This allowed her to enter sleep in a more relaxed state, leading to better rest and a lower baseline pressure the next morning. After 2 weeks, her morning readings started to show the improvement she had been chasing for months. She hadn't changed her diet further, and she hadn't changed her medication. She simply changed the clock. This teaches us that the when matters almost as much as the what. For many seniors, the evening is a time of sedentary behavior. We eat dinner and then we sit. We watch the news, which can be stressful, or we watch television shows. We sit in a recliner for 3 or 4 hours before bed. This keeps the blood pooling in the legs and the metabolism stagnant. Breaking up that evening sedentary time with a rhythmic, gentle walk can be a game changer. It doesn't have to be fast. In fact, in the evening, I prefer a slower, more rambling pace than a power walk. You want to soothe the nervous system, not excite it. If you are currently exercising in the morning and not seeing results, do not stop, but try shifting that session to the late afternoon or early evening, or split it in half. Do 15 minutes in the morning to wake up and 15 minutes in the evening to wind down. For Margaret, the evening walk became her favorite part of the day. She said she noticed the sunsets for the first time in years, and she slept deeper than she had in a decade. Deep sleep is a powerful medicine for blood pressure because it is the only time your heart truly gets to rest. Anything that promotes better sleep promotes better blood pressure control. This strategy is safe for almost everyone, but always listen to your body. If walking late at night makes you feel too energized to sleep, then move it a bit earlier, perhaps before dinner instead of after. You have to find the sweet spot that leaves you feeling relaxed, not wired. Linda came to the clinic with a complaint that she thought was unrelated to her blood pressure. She was 72 and she complained about heavy legs. She said that by the end of the day, her ankles would be puffy and swollen and her legs felt like lead weights. She also had borderline high blood pressure. When I examined her, I saw the connection immediately. Her circulation was sluggish. The blood was going down to her legs just fine, but it was struggling to get back up to her heart against gravity. You have to imagine your circulatory system as a loop. Your heart is a powerful pump that pushes fresh, oxygenated blood down to your toes. That is the easy part because gravity helps it along. But getting that blood back up from your feet to your heart is much harder. It has to fight gravity all the way up. To do this, your body relies on a system of valves in your veins and, more importantly, the muscle contractions in your legs. We often call the calf muscles the second heart. Every time your calf muscle contracts, it squeezes the deep veins in your leg and shoots the blood back up toward your main heart. Linda wasn't using her second heart enough. She was spending a lot of time sitting or standing still in the kitchen. Because her calf muscles weren't pumping, the fluid was pooling in her ankles, causing the swelling. But this also meant her main heart had to work harder to keep the fluid moving. It created a resistance in the system that contributed to her higher blood pressure. I gave Linda a very small, almost invisible exercise to do. I call it the second heart pump, but you might know it as a heel raise or a calf raise. I told her to do this every time she was standing at the sink washing dishes or every time she was brushing her teeth. The transformation for Linda was dual purpose. Within a week, the swelling in her ankles decreased significantly because she was mechanically pumping that fluid out of her tissues and back into circulation. But over the course of a month, we also saw her systolic blood pressure, the top number, come down by several points. By assisting her circulation from the bottom up, she took some of the workload off her heart. Here is how you can do this. It requires no equipment. You can do it while holding onto a kitchen counter, a sturdy chair, or even the bathroom vanity. Stand with your feet hip-width apart. Keep your knees straight but not locked. Keep them soft. Slowly rise up onto the balls of your toes, lifting your heels as high as you comfortably can. Feel the muscles in the back of your lower legs tighten. Pause for just 1 second at the top. Then, slowly, lower your heels back down to the floor. That is 1 repetition. It is simple, but do not underestimate it. The downward phase, lowering your heels, is just as important as the upward phase. Do not just drop your heels. Control the descent. This builds strength and coordination. I recommended that Linda do 3 sets of 10 repetitions throughout the day. She didn't have to carve out a specific workout time. She just integrated it into her life. When she was waiting for the kettle to boil, she did her pumps. When she was watching a commercial on TV, she stood up and did her pumps. This movement is particularly good for seniors because it also improves balance. The muscles that control your ankles are the first line of defense against falls. By strengthening them, you are making yourself more stable on your feet. There is a caution here for anyone who is prone to foot cramps or has plantar fasciitis. If you feel cramping in your arch or calf, stop. You don't need to go as high. Even a small lift of 1 inch helps activate the pump. You can also do this while seated if standing is too difficult or if your balance is compromised. Sit in a firm chair with your feet flat on the floor. Place your hands on your knees and push down to add a little resistance. Then lift your heels while keeping your toes on the ground. It is not as powerful as the standing version because you don't have your body weight, but it still engages the muscle pump and helps circulation. This simple habit supports steadier readings by ensuring that your blood volume is distributed evenly throughout your body rather than pooling in your lower extremities. It is a mechanical assist for your heart, and your heart will thank you for the help. Robert was 81 years old, and he had a very specific challenge. He had severe arthritis in his shoulders and a history of rotator cuff issues. He could not lift weights, he could not do push-ups, he couldn't even hold his arms above his head for very long without pain. He felt that because he couldn't lift things, he couldn't do any strength training. His blood pressure was creeping up, and he felt his physical options were shrinking. I told Robert that for blood pressure, he didn't need to lift heavy barbells. In fact, one of the most well-researched interventions for lowering blood pressure involves a very small muscle group, the hands. It is called isometric hand grip training. The research on this is compelling. Studies have shown that gripping something with a specific amount of force for a set time can lead to significant reductions in blood pressure, sometimes comparable to the effect of a single medication. The mechanism is similar to the wall sits we discussed earlier. When you squeeze your hand tightly, you create a pressure response. When you release, you get that flood of relaxation signals across the entire arterial system. For Robert, this was perfect. He could sit in his favorite armchair. He didn't have to move his painful shoulders. He just had to use his hands. We started him with a simple protocol. You can buy specialized hand grip devices that measure your strength, which are great, but you can also start with something as simple as a stress ball, a tennis ball, or even a tightly rolled up hand towel. The protocol Robert used, and the one that is often used in clinical studies, follows a specific pattern. He would squeeze the object in his right hand. Now, you don't squeeze as hard as you possibly can. You want to squeeze at about 30% of your maximum effort. It should feel like work, but not like you are shaking or in pain. You hold that squeeze for 2 minutes. 2 minutes can feel like a long time. Robert told me that the first time he tried it, he wanted to let go after 45 seconds, but he watched the clock and held on. After 2 minutes, he released and rested for 1 minute. Then he switched to his left hand and did the same thing. Squeeze for 2 minutes, rest for 1 minute. He did this twice for each hand. The whole routine took about 12 minutes. He did this 3 times a week. That is it. He didn't do it every day. The research suggests that 3 times a week is sufficient to signal the blood vessels to adapt. After 4 weeks, Robert came in for a check. His top number had dropped by 8 points. He was astounded. He said, "Dr. Ben, I'm just squeezing a ball while watching the news." I told him, "Yes, but you are sending a very loud signal to your nervous system to regulate your pressure." This is incredibly effective for seniors because it is accessible. You can do it even if you have limited mobility in your legs or back. You can do it if the weather is bad and you can't go outside. It is a couch-friendly exercise that actually works. However, a word of caution for anyone with uncontrolled high blood pressure, meaning your numbers are very high, perhaps over 180 systolic. You should always consult your doctor before starting isometric exercises. And just like with the wall sits, you must breathe. Do not clench your jaw and do not hold your breath while you squeeze the ball. Keep your face relaxed. If you feel dizzy or lightheaded, stop immediately. Robert found that buying a designated gel egg or a proper hand grip tool helped him stay consistent because he kept it on the side table next to his remote control. It became a visual cue. Every time he sat down to watch the evening news, he did his grip training. He turned a passive time into a productive health session. Another benefit Robert noticed was that his jar opening ability improved. As we age, grip strength is a strong predictor of overall longevity and independence. By training his grip for his blood pressure, he was inadvertently helping himself stay independent in the kitchen. It is important to note that these changes take time. You will not see a drop in blood pressure 10 minutes after you finish squeezing the ball. In fact, immediately after the exercise, your pressure might be slightly higher due to the effort. That is normal. The benefit comes from the adaptation your body makes over the weeks and months. It is a cumulative effect. Consistency is key. You cannot store the benefits. If you stop doing it for a month, the benefits will slowly fade and your pressure will likely creep back up. It is a lifestyle maintenance tool, much like brushing your teeth. I also want to mention how this connects to blood sugar. While hand grip training is primarily for blood pressure, any muscle contraction uses glucose. Even small muscles like those in the hand burn sugar when they work. In older adults, we want to seize every opportunity to use our muscles, no matter how small. It all adds up to a healthier metabolic profile. Eleanor was 79, and like many of my patients in that age bracket, she was silently battling a fear that often goes unspoken. It wasn't just fear of her blood pressure numbers, though those were high. It was the fear of becoming frail. She lived alone in a 2-story house, and she told me that lately she found herself looking at her favorite armchair not as a place of rest, but as a trap. Getting out of it was becoming a struggle. She would have to rock back and forth 3 times, grunt with effort, and push heavily on the armrests just to get to a standing position. Because of this difficulty, she started sitting more. She avoided getting up to get a glass of water because it was too much trouble. This inactivity was a disaster for her metabolic health. Her blood sugar was creeping into the pre-diabetic range, and her blood pressure was stubbornly high because her vascular resistance was increasing. I explained to Eleanor that the muscles in her legs and hips, her glutes and her quadriceps, are the largest muscle groups in the human body. When these muscles are strong and active, they act like massive sponges for blood sugar. They pull glucose out of the bloodstream to use for fuel, which helps regulate insulin levels. But they also act as a pressure release valve for the heart. When you have more muscle mass in your lower body, your body has more vascular pathways to send blood to, which lowers the overall resistance in your system. This is where blood pressure and blood sugar meet. You cannot fix one without helping the other, and the key to both lies in the strength of your legs. We didn't send Eleanor to a gym to use leg press machines. We used her own living room furniture. The exercise is technically called a squat, but for seniors, I prefer to call it the sit to stand. It is functional, it is safe, and it directly mimics the movement you need to maintain your independence. Here is the protocol I gave Eleanor, and it is the same one you can use today. Find a sturdy chair. This is important. It should not be a soft sofa that you sink into, and it certainly shouldn't be a chair with wheels. A dining room chair is usually perfect. Place it against a wall so it cannot slide backward. Start by sitting in the chair. Scoot forward slightly so you are not leaning back against the backrest. Place your feet flat on the floor, shoulder width apart. Now, the goal is to stand up using your legs, not your arms. If you are just starting, you might need to cross your arms over your chest to prevent yourself from pushing off the seat or your knees. If that is too difficult, you can place your hands lightly on your thighs, but try not to shove yourself up. Engage your core, lean forward slightly from the hips, keep your back straight, do not round your spine, and drive through your heels to stand up fully. Squeeze your glutes at the top. You are now standing. That is only half the rep. Now, you must sit back down, but you must do it slowly. Do not just flop back into the chair. Control the descent. Count to 3 as you lower yourself. 1, 2, 3, touch the seat. This slow lowering phase is where the real strength is built. It forces your muscles to control your body weight against gravity. Eleanor started doing 5 of these every time a commercial break came on during her evening show. At first, she could only do 3 before her legs felt shaky. That is normal. That shakiness is your nervous system learning to fire the muscle fibers again. Within 2 months, Eleanor was doing sets of 10 with ease. But the biggest change wasn't just that she could get out of her chair effortlessly, it was her numbers. Her resting heart rate dropped, and her systolic blood pressure came down by 6 points. Because she was activating those large muscles frequently, her blood sugar control improved significantly, removing a layer of metabolic stress from her cardiovascular system. For those of you reading who might have knee pain, you can modify this. You do not have to go all the way down to the chair. You can place a firm cushion or 2 on the chair to raise the seat height. This reduces the range of motion and makes it easier on the knees while still working the muscles. The key is the movement, not the depth. This is a movement that tells your body you are still capable, strong, and active. James was a 66-year-old retired executive. He had a type A personality, driven, intense, and easily frustrated. He had carried high blood pressure for 20 years. When he retired, he thought his stress would vanish, but he just found new things to stress about. He watched the news and got angry. He worried about the stock market. His doctor told him to walk for his blood pressure. So, James walked. But James walked the way he worked. He walked fast, with a furrowed brow, listening to political podcasts that made him angry or thinking about arguments he wanted to have. He would come back from a 30-minute walk, check his blood pressure, and find it was even higher than when he left. He told me, "Exercise doesn't work for me, Dr. Ben. It just spikes my numbers." The problem was not the walking. The problem was the state of his nervous system while he was walking. He was physically moving, which is good, but his autonomic nervous system was stuck in fight or flight mode. He was flooding his system with cortisol and adrenaline, which tighten blood vessels. He was doing an aerobic activity with an anaerobic mindset. I introduced James to a technique I call the 4-7-8 breathing walk. It is a way to force the nervous system into a rest and digest state even while you are moving. It turns a simple walk into a powerful medical intervention for blood pressure. The 4-7-8 technique is a rhythmic breathing pattern often used for anxiety, but when you pair it with the cadence of your steps, it creates a physiological lock that prevents your blood pressure from spiking. Here is how it works. You start your walk at a comfortable, steady pace. You do not need to speed walk. Once you have your rhythm, you start the breathing pattern. Inhale through your nose deeply and quietly for a count of 4 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale. Hold that breath for a count of 7 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hold. Exhale through your mouth, making a whooshing sound for a count of 8 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Exhale. Now, I admit, the count of 7 and 8 can be tricky when you are walking. For many seniors, I simplify it to a box breathing walk or a simple 4-4 count. Inhale for 4 steps. Exhale for 4 steps. The specific count matters less than the intention. You must make your exhale longer than or equal to your inhale, and it must be rhythmic. When you focus on counting your steps and syncing your breath, you cannot think about the news. You cannot ruminate on your worries. Your brain has to focus on the numbers. This breaks the cycle of psychological stress. But physiologically, the long exhale stimulates the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the brake pedal for your heart. When you stimulate it, you send a direct signal to your heart to slow down and to your blood vessels to dilate. James tried this. He left his headphones at home, he stopped listening to the news, he just counted steps and breathed. He found that after a 20-minute walk using this technique, his post-exercise blood pressure was significantly lower. He felt a sense of calm that he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't just exercising his legs, he was exercising his ability to relax. If you try the 4-7-8 and feel lightheaded, stop the holding part. Just inhale for 4 steps and exhale for 6 or 8 steps. The goal is to breathe deeply and slowly. Most of us take shallow, rapid breaths when we walk, which signals stress to the body. By taking control of the breath, you take control of the pressure. I'm curious about your own walking habits. Scroll down and leave a brief comment. Tell me how many minutes you usually walk for, or if you find walking difficult. It helps the community see what is realistic. Thomas was 70 and had a scary experience that almost made him quit exercising forever. He had joined a local seniors fitness class. He was doing well, keeping up with the group. At the end of the session, the instructor called time, and everyone stopped. Thomas stopped marching, stood still to check his pulse, and suddenly the room started to spin. His vision went gray and he had to grab the wall to keep from collapsing. He was terrified. He thought he was having a stroke. He went to the ER and everything checked out fine. They told him he had post-exercise hypotension. Thomas came to me, afraid to elevate his heart rate ever again. I explained to him that what happened was a mechanical issue, not a heart attack. When you exercise, your blood vessels in your legs open wide to supply oxygen to the muscles. Your heart pumps hard to fill those expanded vessels. As long as you are moving, your leg muscles pump that blood back up to your heart. But if you stop moving suddenly, like Thomas did when the instructor called time, your heart is still pumping fast and your vessels are still wide open, but the muscle pump has stopped. Gravity takes over immediately. The blood pools in your legs. It drains away from your head. Your brain suddenly doesn't get enough oxygen and you feel dizzy or you faint. This is incredibly common in older adults, especially those on blood pressure medication, because the medication prevents the body from constricting the vessels quickly to compensate. We established the cool-down safety rule for Thomas, and it is mandatory for anyone over 60 taking blood pressure medication. The rule is simple: you never, ever stop abruptly. If you have been walking, you spend the last 5 minutes slowing down gradually. You go from a brisk pace to a medium pace to a slow stroll to a lazy meander. This gives your blood vessels time to constrict slowly back to their resting state while the muscles are still gently pumping blood back to the head. If you are doing the wall sits or the sit to stands we discussed, you do not just finish your set and go sit on the couch immediately. You march in place gently for 60 seconds. You shake out your arms and legs. You keep the fluid moving until your heart rate has come down near its resting level. For Thomas, this knowledge gave him his confidence back. He realized his body wasn't broken, he just needed a safer exit strategy from his workout. Now, he treats the cool down as the most important part of the session. It is the bridge back to safety. If you ever feel dizziness, the safest thing to do is not to try to fight through it while standing. Sit down immediately, or even better, lie down and elevate your feet. This uses gravity to send the blood back to the brain. But the goal is to prevent that by cooling down properly every single time. Sarah, a 65-year-old retired teacher, was diligent. She did the exercises, she ate the low-sodium meals, but she was ready to give up because her home monitor kept telling her she was in the danger zone. "Dr. Ben," she said, "I just did my breathing walk. I came inside, sat down, put the cuff on, and it was 150/90. This isn't working." I asked her, "Sarah, exactly how soon after you sat down did you press the button?" "Well, right away," she said. "I wanted to see the result." This is the most common mistake I see. Sarah was measuring her active blood pressure, not her resting blood pressure. Of course it was high. She had just been moving. But beyond that, she was making several technical errors that were artificially inflating her numbers, causing her unnecessary anxiety. To truly know if this 10-minute workout is working for you, you must master the resting measurement ritual. This is not just about recording a number, it is about accuracy. If you measure incorrectly, you might increase your medication when you don't need to, or you might worry yourself sick. Here is the checklist I gave Sarah. You must follow this every time you check your numbers. First, the buffer zone. You must not check your blood pressure immediately after exercise, eating, or drinking caffeine. You need to wait at least 30 minutes after exercise before checking your resting baseline. If you check it sooner, you are checking your recovery rate, not your resting pressure. Second, the 5-minute quiet. Before you put the cuff on, you must sit in a chair for 5 full minutes. No talking, no scrolling on your phone, no watching TV, just sitting. This allows your fluid levels to settle and your nervous system to baseline. Third, body position. This is where most errors happen. Sarah was checking her pressure while sitting on her soft sofa, legs crossed, with the cuff over her sweater. This can add 10 to 15 points to the reading. You must sit on a firm chair with back support. Your feet must be flat on the floor, never crossed. Crossing your legs compresses the veins and raises pressure. Your arm should be supported on a table so that the cuff is at the same height as your heart. If your arm is dangling at your side, the reading will be too high. If your arm is held up too high, the reading will be too low. Fourth, the cuff itself. It must be against bare skin. Do not put it over a sleeve. And it must be the right size. If the cuff is too small and tight, it will give you a false high reading. Sarah adjusted her ritual. She waited 30 minutes after her walk. She sat at the kitchen table, feet flat, back supported, arm on the table. She sat quietly for 5 minutes. Then she pressed the button. Her reading? 128/78. She was not in the danger zone. She was doing great. The exercise was working perfectly. Her measurement technique had been the problem. This ritual gives you the truth. It allows you to see the real impact of the wall sits, the evening walks, and the calf pumps. It empowers you with accurate data so you can have a real conversation with your doctor. George was a 70-year-old former truck driver who came to me with a blood pressure issue that seemed to defy medication. He was taking his pills, He was walking, and he was watching his salt intake, yet his top number, his systolic pressure, hovered stubbornly around 145. When I observed George in the exam room, I noticed something that he wasn't even aware of. Every time he spoke about his health or his worries, his shoulders would creep up toward his ears. His neck was stiff, and his posture was rigid. He carried decades of tension in what we call the trapezius muscles, the large muscles that connect the neck to the shoulders. I explained to George that the neck is a critical highway for blood pressure regulation. The carotid arteries which supply blood to the brain run right through the neck. When the muscles surrounding these vessels and the cervical spine are chronically tight, they can create a form of mechanical stress. Furthermore, chronic tension in the neck sends a constant signal of defense to the brain. It tells your nervous system that you are under threat, which keeps the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response, active. As long as that system is active, your blood vessels remain constricted and your pressure stays high. George wasn't relaxing his stress hinge, so his body never got the signal to lower the pressure. We introduced a simple, gentle movement called the neck decompression routine. This is not about cracking your neck or aggressive stretching, which can be dangerous for seniors. It is about slow, deliberate release. Here is the routine George used, and it is safe for you to do while sitting in your armchair. Sit up tall with your spine away from the back of the chair. Drop your shoulders down as far as they will go. Imagine you are trying to put your shoulder blades into your back pockets. Slowly, tilt your right ear toward your right shoulder. Do not lift the shoulder to meet the ear. Keep the shoulder heavy. You will feel a gentle stretch on the left side of your neck. Hold this for 3 slow breaths. Bring your head back to the center. Now tilt your left ear toward your left shoulder. Keep the right shoulder heavy. Breathe for 3 counts. Return to center. Next, slowly turn your head to look over your right shoulder, as if you are checking a blind spot. Only go as far as is comfortable. Hold, return to center, repeat to the left. George did this simple sequence twice a day, once before breakfast and once while watching the evening news. The physical release of tension did 2 things. First, it improved blood flow to the brain, which stopped his brain from panicking and raising pressure to compensate. Second, the act of consciously dropping his shoulders broke the feedback loop of stress. After 3 weeks, George's stubborn hypertension started to yield. His readings dropped into the 130s for the first time in years. He realized that he had been physically holding on to his pressure, and he had to learn to let it go. If you have a history of neck surgery, cervical spine issues, or vertigo, keep your movements very small. You do not need a deep stretch to get the benefit. You just need to mobilize the tissue. Never roll your head in a full circle, as this can grind the cervical vertebrae. Stick to side and rotational movements. Betty was 76 and suffered from a problem that she thought was just a bladder issue, not a blood pressure issue. She complained of nocturia, which is the medical term for waking up multiple times in the night to urinate. She told me she was waking up 3 or 4 times every night. This fragmented sleep was destroying her energy, but it was also keeping her nighttime blood pressure dangerously high. When you don't sleep deeply, your blood pressure doesn't dip the way it is supposed to. I asked Betty about her ankles. "Oh, they are always swollen by dinner time," she said, "but they go down by morning." This was the clue. During the day, gravity pulls fluid down into your legs. If you have a slightly weaker heart or stiff veins, common in seniors, that fluid gets stuck there. It pools in the tissues of the lower legs. This is why your ankles look puffy at 6 p.m. When Betty lay down flat in bed to sleep, gravity was no longer holding that fluid down. The fluid re-entered her bloodstream and rushed back to her kidneys. Her kidneys, sensing this sudden flood of fluid, produced more urine to get rid of it. That is why she was waking up all night. Her heart was working overtime all night to process this fluid shift, keeping her blood pressure high. We implemented a routine I call the fluid drain reset, or simply legs up time. This is a passive workout for your circulatory system. I instructed Betty to take 30 minutes in the late afternoon, around 4 or 5 p.m., to lie down on the couch or her bed. But she wasn't just lying flat. She stacked 3 firm pillows at the foot of the bed and placed her legs on top of them. The goal was to get her feet slightly higher than the level of her heart. By doing this in the late afternoon, she used gravity to help drain that fluid out of her legs and back into her circulation while she was awake. Her kidneys processed the fluid then, meaning she used the bathroom more in the evening, but far less during the night. The change was dramatic. Within a week, Betty was only waking up once a night instead of 4 times. Because she was getting continuous blocks of sleep, her cortisol levels dropped, and her morning blood pressure reading came down by nearly 10 points. She was treating her blood pressure by managing her fluids. For you to do this, you do not need to be flexible. You don't need to put your legs straight up a wall, which can be hard on the hamstrings and back. Just creating a gentle slope with pillows or using a recliner that elevates the feet above the hips is sufficient. This is especially important if you consume salt, as salt holds onto water. By mechanically helping your body process that water before bed, you save your heart from working the night shift. A safety note: if you have congestive heart failure or difficulty breathing when lying flat, do not lie completely flat. Prop your upper body up with pillows as well, so you are in a reclined V shape. Always prioritize your breathing comfort. David was 68 and had lost a significant amount of upper body strength. He used to work in construction, but after retirement, he stopped lifting anything heavier than a remote control. He felt frail. He knew that strength training was good for blood pressure, but he was intimidated by dumbbells and afraid of hurting his rotator cuffs. He also had blood sugar concerns. His doctor had warned him that his fasting glucose was creeping up. I introduced David to the counter press. This is a modified push-up that is safe for almost every senior and requires no getting down on the floor. It engages the chest, shoulders, and triceps, but also the core. These are large muscles, and as we discussed earlier, working large muscles helps burn off blood sugar and reduces arterial stiffness. Here is how David did it, and how you can do it in your kitchen while waiting for your coffee to brew. Stand facing your kitchen counter. Make sure the floor is not slippery. Wear shoes with grip, not socks. Place your hands on the edge of the counter, slightly wider than your shoulders. Step your feet back about 2 to 3 feet, so your body forms a straight line from your head to your heels. You are leaning against the counter. Tighten your stomach muscles. Keep your body rigid like a plank. Slowly bend your elbows to lower your chest toward the counter edge. Go only as far as you feel comfortable and in control. Then, push firmly through your palms to straighten your arms and return to the starting position. David started with just 5 repetitions. It felt easy, but the next day, he felt a pleasant soreness in his chest muscles, a sign they were waking up. Over 2 months, he built up to doing 3 sets of 10 repetitions every other day. The result for David wasn't just bigger muscles, it was better metabolic control. By activating his upper body, he was increasing his body's demand for glucose, pulling sugar out of the blood. And because he was breathing rhythmically during the movement, exhale as you push up, inhale as you go down, he was training his heart to pump against mild resistance, which strengthens the heart muscle itself without the danger of heavy lifting. His blood sugar stabilized and his resting blood pressure settled into a healthier range because his vascular system became more efficient. If your wrists hurt during this movement, you can modify it. Instead of using your palms flat on the counter edge, you can make fists and rest on your knuckles if the surface is soft, or use a wall push-up instead, which puts even less weight on the wrists. To do a wall push-up, follow the same steps, but place your hands on a wall instead of a counter. It is lighter, but still effective for seniors. Maria was a 72-year-old grandmother who loved to cook. She made wonderful meals for her family, but she struggled with what we call postprandial spikes. This means her blood sugar would shoot up dangerously high after a meal, and her blood pressure would follow suit. The digestion process requires a lot of blood flow to the stomach, which can sometimes cause heart rate and pressure to fluctuate wildly in older adults. She felt tired and heavy after eating, often heading straight to her chair for a nap. This habit was the worst thing she could do for her numbers. I told Maria that the most critical 10-minute workout of her day wasn't in the morning or the evening. It was exactly 20 minutes after her last bite of lunch or dinner. We call this the digestive stroll. The timing here is specific science. When you eat, your blood glucose levels start to peak roughly 60 to 90 minutes later. However, if you start moving about 15 to 20 minutes after eating, your muscles will intercept that glucose before it reaches a peak. Your muscles will use the fresh fuel from your food immediately. Maria changed her routine. Instead of cleaning the dishes immediately or sitting down to watch TV, she put on her shoes. She didn't walk fast. This is not a power walk. A power walk right after eating can cause indigestion. She went for a stroll, a gentle, meandering pace around her garden or down the block and back. This gentle movement redirects blood flow in a balanced way. It prevents the massive sugar spike, which in turn prevents the massive insulin spike. High insulin levels are known to retain sodium and stiffen arteries, raising blood pressure. By blunting the sugar spike with a walk, Maria was indirectly keeping her arteries softer and her pressure lower. Her post-dinner readings transformed. She no longer had that groggy, heavy feeling. And interestingly, her morning fasting sugar numbers went down because she wasn't going to bed with a system full of unused glucose. If the weather is bad, you can do this inside. You can march in place gently, or simply walk laps around your living room and kitchen. The goal is continuous, low-intensity movement for 10 to 15 minutes. It acts as a natural medication for your metabolism. Robert, a distinct patient from the one mentioned earlier, was a retired school teacher aged 69. He had a very reactive blood pressure. If the phone rang unexpectedly, his pressure spiked. If he couldn't find his keys, his pressure spiked. He lived in a state of high alert. He had tried meditation, but he said his mind was too noisy, and he couldn't just sit there in silence. I gave Robert a technique that creates a physical vibration in the body to stimulate the vagus nerve. We called it the nitric oxide hum. It sounds strange, but the science is solid. Research has shown that humming, specifically at a low frequency, increases the production of nitric oxide in the nasal sinuses. This gas is a potent vasodilator. It opens up blood vessels. Furthermore, the physical vibration of humming stimulates the vagus nerve, which runs through the vocal cords. This calms the heart rate. Robert didn't have to meditate in silence. He just had to sit comfortably and hum. He would take a deep breath in through his nose, and on the exhale, he would keep his mouth closed and make a long, low mmm sound. He focused on feeling the vibration in his lips and his chest. He did this for 5 minutes whenever he felt stressed or before he took his blood pressure measurement. He found it incredibly soothing. The vibration gave his mind something to focus on, quieting the noise of his thoughts. Physiologically, he was generating his own blood pressure medication, nitric oxide, right in his nasal passages. This is a tool you can use anywhere. You can do it in the car, in the shower, or while gardening. It is an internal massage for your nervous system. If you feel self-conscious, do it when you are alone. But do not underestimate the power of your own voice to calm your heart. Patricia was 75 and had a habit that many seniors have. She loved very hot showers. She said the heat helped her arthritis. However, she noticed that after her showers, she would sometimes feel faint, and other times her heart would race. Heat causes blood vessels to dilate rapidly, dropping pressure, which causes dizziness. But then the body often overcompensates by racing the heart to bring pressure back up. We turned her shower into a therapeutic vascular workout called thermal contrast. I instructed Patricia to enjoy her warm shower as usual to loosen her joints. But for the last 30 seconds of the shower, she was to turn the dial to lukewarm. Not cold, not freezing, just lukewarm, slightly cooler than body temperature. This mild cooling signal causes the blood vessels near the skin to gently constrict. It trains the smooth muscles lining the arteries to be responsive. It is like gymnastics for your veins. It helps tone the vascular system without the shock of an ice bath, which could be dangerous for a heart patient. Patricia found that finishing with lukewarm water made her feel more alert and stable when she stepped out. She no longer had the dizzy spells. It helped her body regulate its internal thermostat and kept her blood pressure more stable throughout the morning. A crucial safety warning: Never use freezing cold water if you have a heart condition, as the shock can cause a spasm in the coronary arteries. We are looking for cool or tepid, not cold. It should feel refreshing, not shocking. Before we conclude, I want to give you one more opportunity to engage with our community. We have talked about walking, eating, and sleeping. I want to know about your hydration, which connects deeply to pressure. Scroll down and comment water if you drink a glass first thing in the morning, or coffee if you start with caffeine. There is no judgment, just curiosity. Conclusion: we have built a comprehensive strategy today, moving far beyond the simplistic advice of eat less salt and exercise more. We have looked at the human body as an interconnected system where movement, gravity, timing, and even breathing all play a role in the pressure within your arteries and the sugar in your blood. Let's recap the toolkit you now possess. You have the quiet hold of the wall sits, proving that you don't need to move to lower pressure. You have the evening rhythm, shifting your walks to match your circadian dip. You have the second heart calf pumps to fight gravity and aid circulation. You have the hand grip squeezes, the armchair solution for arterial stiffness. You have the sit to stand, building the large muscles that devour blood sugar. You have the breathing walk, turning exercise into a nervous system reset. You have the cool down safety rule, ensuring you end every movement safely. You have the resting measurement ritual, guaranteeing that the numbers you see are the truth, not an error. You have the neck decompression, releasing the stress hinge that blocks flow to the brain. You have the fluid drain reset, using pillows to save your heart from working the night shift. You have the counter press, maintaining upper body strength without strain. You have the digestive stroll, the specific timing to blunt sugar spikes. You have the nitric oxide hum, using vibration to open vessels. And you have the thermal contrast, toning your vessels with water temperature. This may seem like a long list. It might feel overwhelming to try and do all of them. So, my advice is simple: don't. Do not try to do 14 things tomorrow. That is a recipe for stress, and stress is the enemy we are fighting. Pick one movement item, perhaps the wall sit or the calf pump. Pick one lifestyle item, perhaps the fluid drain or the evening timing. Commit to those two things for 14 days. Write down your numbers. See what happens. When those become habits, indistinguishable from brushing your teeth, then add one more. Your body is resilient. Even after 60, 70, or 80 years, it is waiting for the right signals to heal and regulate itself. You have the power to send those signals. You do not have to be an athlete. You just have to be consistent, patient, and kind to your body. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you found these detailed strategies helpful, and if you believe in a calm, practical approach to senior health, please subscribe to the channel. It helps me continue to bring you this information. And if you have a friend who is struggling with their numbers, share this guide with them. You might give them the tool they have been looking for. I'm Dr. Ben Harris. Keep moving, keep breathing, and I will see you in the next video.